I'm joined now by Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland from the foyer of the West Block. Great to see you, Minister. Thank you for speaking with me tonight. I actually want to start with this double whammy from the government today. There's obviously a delay on the line, so I'm going to tell our viewers that. I don't want to sound like I'm talking over top of you. But earlier, the government in the throne speech laid out the priorities, a 55-minute speech, then a 15-minute address from the Prime Minister. So what is the message you don't think is sinking in for Canadians in order to do this double approach today?
You know, Lisa, that is a great question, and it's great to be with you. I think the reason the Prime Minister took the serious step of speaking directly himself to Canadians for 15 minutes tonight is to underscore the severity of the COVID situation that we're in. You know, as he said, in Canada's 4 most populous provinces, the second wave is already here. And I think it's easy not to notice that. You know, I went for a run along the Rideau Canal this morning, and the sun was shining. It's a warm day in Ottawa. It was a warm day in Ottawa. The leaves were beautiful. And it was hard for me to really emotionally appreciate that we are in a global pandemic. The second wave of COVID is here, and we all need to act accordingly. And in speaking directly to Canadians, the message the Prime Minister was delivering is we all have a choice, each one of us personally. We can flatten the curve again, as we did in the spring, but we have to change how we're behaving. Dr. Tam said yesterday, we all have to cut down on our social interactions. And if each one of us does that, we can really get through this without more extreme measures. And so let's do it. Let's keep our kids in school. That was really, you know, the driving reason for the Prime Minister to speak directly to Canadians tonight. And I hope the message got through.
And I want to talk about the pandemic in a minute, but one question, though, still again about today. It was definitely an awkward dynamic as an observer, seeing the Prime Minister sitting quiet beside a Governor General who's facing such severe allegations of workplace harassment. There's obviously a problem here that needs solving. So what is the leadership plan on restoring respect to that role that may be lost for some Canadians?
Look, you spoke quite rightly just now, Lisa, about the importance in our Canadian constitutional structure of respect for the office of the Governor General. And you're completely right. And we all need to respect that role. We need to respect that structure. It has served us very well, and I have no doubt it's going to continue to serve us very well.
Is there a plan, though, going forward now that the throne speech has gone forward, has unfolded?
Well, as you know, the Privy Council office is looking into the allegations. And I will say that our government takes very seriously the right of every Canadian, very much including people who work in the public service, to a safe and comfortable and fair workplace.
And I want to turn back now to the pandemic. And you just said, you know, today it was a beautiful day in Ottawa. But even in your own riding, though, whether it's Ottawa or here in Toronto, there have been so many people forced to wait in these crazy long lineups for a COVID test. Not to mention the results, which are then taking many days. So this situation seems so untenable, especially since so many people have to take days off work just waiting for that result. So in your opinion, where is the flaw in the system?
Well, in my opinion, the flaw in the system is that COVID is a menace, and it is a huge challenge to deal with this second wave. Our government knew that it was coming, and that's why over the summer we negotiated the Safe Restart Agreement with the provinces, where we wrote a check for $19 billion. $13 billion of those dollars were for healthcare, including testing and tracing and PPE, and that's our role to provide that support. And I also know the provinces are all working incredibly hard to get the testing and tracing capacity to where it needs to be to support us as the virus races ahead. And we are doing a lot more testing and tracing now than we were in the spring. We need to do even more. We need to ramp up. And we're working on that together. That's what we need to do. And I want to say to Canadians, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in that message to Canadians, a lot of them are frustrated by where we find ourselves on this September 23rd. And they wonder that if the Liberals hadn't put the government on hold for over a month, the healthcare system perhaps could have been better prepared for what the Prime Minister is now calling the official second wave of this. Again, in this question of these lineups and the delays on so many levels.
Well, Lisa, we didn't put the government on hold. I have been working like crazy all summer and all September. And I know everyone in the federal government has been, and I know everyone in the provinces who, of course, have the direct responsibility for healthcare have been working really, really hard too. The testing and tracing has been ramped up, and we all need to now move to the next level. But I do want to say directly to Canadians, ultimately, the way that we will all stop COVID, the way we will flatten the curve, is by each one of us personally doing the right thing. And that means limit your social interactions. Really, really, we need to do that right now. Wear a mask whenever you can. I wore one just until they turned on the camera. Wash your hands, socially distance. It is very boring, it is very frustrating, but we have to do it. And if we all do it now, we can really flatten this second wave.
And I want to talk a little bit more about what we saw in the first wave, which was so devastating to so many Canadians. And you had to talk about it every single day, the situation in long-term care homes in this country. And I wonder if you can give us a few more specifics on this enforcing penalties for neglect in long-term care homes that was mentioned today. I mean, that certainly is the tragic legacy of this pandemic so far. And Minister, can you tell us what that would look like, that enforcement?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and you're quite right to point to the steps that were outlined in the speech from the throne on tightening control of long-term care facilities, the penalties, but also getting some national standards in place. And there was also a discussion of providing more support to the personal support workers who play such an essential role in long-term care facilities. So that is something we definitely have to fix. It's something that the federal government needs to do in close collaboration with the provinces. And it's something we're working on. And I do want to say, this is not just about fixing just the atrocious neglect that we saw in the spring, something I think all Canadians should be ashamed of. It is about being sure those mistakes are not repeated now in the fall. And I think that's what we all need to be committed to ensuring.
Absolutely. I think everybody in this country shares that view. Your government said today this is not the time for austerity. And so with no end in sight, so many Canadians have been helped by the benefits offered, although CERB runs out in 4 days. So that alone is giving some anxiety. But there are still so many asking, is there going to be a huge punishment down the road to pay for this? You're now the finance minister, so take us a little further into the future, what Canadians should be preparing for when it comes to dealing with this massive deficit. The next generation is scared.
Okay, so first of all, you mentioned, Lisa, quite rightly, some people worried about the end of the CERB, and you're also right. Nearly 9 million Canadians have been profoundly supported and helped by the CERB. And I would say to all those Canadians, have no fear. The transition which is coming is designed to move to a more sustainable, robust place, moving the people who qualify for EI to EI. and ensuring that there is support in place for people who do not qualify for EI. And that is really important. We're going to be talking about that more, but that support needs to be there, and it will still be there. The Prime Minister tonight talked about something that I hear from a lot of people, which is, as you say, Lisa, how do we afford this all? How can we do it? And here is the answer. Now, the first answer is we went into this crisis in an enviable position. Canada had the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7. So we had the fiscal firepower to do what we needed to do, and we have the fiscal firepower to continue doing that. And you don't need to take my word for it. One of the major credit rating agencies just this week reaffirmed Canada's AAA credit rating. We are the leader of the pack when it comes to wise and prudent fiscal management. The second thing we have going for us is interest rates are at historic lows. And when I say historic, I mean really, really historic. The amount of money the federal government is paying for our debts relative to GDP, even after this extra spending we've had to take on for COVID, is at a 100-year low. That's pretty good. And that is a real advantage we have going into this. And the final thing that I think is so important to remember is this is one of those moments where, you know the saying, a stitch in time saves 9? This is a moment like that. This is a moment when doing the right thing, supporting individual Canadians, supporting Canadian businesses, actually in the medium term is economically the right thing to do, and actually is going to mean our debts are lower. By supporting Canadians, we are preventing a vicious spiral of bankruptcies, of unemployment, of unemployed Canadians not being able to spend in the economy, and the economy getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and our country truly not being able to pay our debts. What we're doing now is, and we're already seeing it, we have seen already a stronger than expected economic recovery. And once we have crushed COVID, thanks to our government's support, and frankly, thanks to the fact that Canadians are terrific, we are really going to be in a position for our economy to come roaring back. And it is through jobs and growth that we are going to keep our economy strong and our finances sustainable.
Well, it can't come soon enough for so many Canadians. I think I saw today 165,000 small and medium businesses are bankrupt or on their way to bankruptcy, just trying to recover from the first wave of this. So I know you're not a clairvoyant, but you are the finance minister. On the Canada-U.S. border closure, I have to ask, it looks like 2020 is now a write-off. So how much of a body blow is this to the Canadian economy the longer this pivotal doorway stays closed?
Well, actually, Lisa, it's not closed. And I am really proud of how Canada and the United States have been able to work together on the border in a way which is unprecedented in our history. And we've done something which I have to tell you, in March, when we were negotiating this, I wasn't quite sure we would be able to pull off. And that is, we have managed to restrict non-essential travel now for quite a few months, while allowing essential travel, essential passage of goods and services across the border to continue unabated. That is no small feat. And that has happened and is happening. And you're seeing it, for example, in industries like the car sector, which is a highly integrated sector where Canada and the US work extremely closely together. That sector is rebounding. And one of the reasons that it is able to rebound, in addition to the excellence of all the people who work there, one of the reasons that rebound is happening is because goods and services in the auto sector are crossing the border freely. That's what needs to happen. At the same time, and I know the vast majority of Canadians agree with me on this, now is not the time for non-essential travel between Canada and the United States.
So those snowbirds are just going to have to start enjoying Canadian winters again for the next little while anyway. And Deputy Prime Minister, we thank you so much for joining us. There's so much. I'm sure we could go on and on and on, but I thank you. I know you're very busy this evening. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, really great to talk to you, Lisa. And please, everyone, let's flatten the curve together, limit our social interactions. Please let us all wear our masks. If we do it right, we can avoid having to do much more terrible things, and we can let our kids keep going to school. Thanks a lot, Lisa.
Thank you so much.